Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for choosing Across the Fence. I'm Will Michael in for Fran Stoddard. It's been 5.5 years since a spark from a welder's torch ignited a fire that ripped through the historic Pringle Herbarium at the University of Vermont. At the time of the fire, the herbarium was the largest Vermont flora collection in the world and the third largest herbarium in New England, with species dating back to the early 1800s. So what was the fallout from the fire? What's the status of the herbarium now? Across the Fence spoke with a professor who's overseen the collection for 5 decades.
It was quite the day. I got a phone call from folks here saying the herbarium's on fire, which I didn't compute at first, and then I realized it was for real, so I headed out as fast as I could.
Plant biologist Dave Barrington is talking about the day that he thought he would see his life's work go up in flames.
And I got here to see the roof in flames, and my star volunteers were here, and they were absolutely in tears because the prospect at that point was of the whole building burning down and losing the entire natural history collections for the university in one morning.
Barrington has worked at the University of Vermont since 1974, coming here to the Torrey building every day. It's one of the oldest buildings on campus, originally serving as the university library and museum. Since the mid-70s, the building has housed the Pringle Herbarium, an expansive botanical collection used for reference and research. The third largest herbarium in New England, the Pringle houses over 350,000 specimens. At the time of the fire, an extensive renovation on the outside of the building and the roof was almost complete.
We had always known about some of the architectural appeal of the building, but the exterior renovation really brought those things out. The original mansard roof, which now sports the original colored slate, is a key feature. The window ornaments on the outside, which are unaffected by the fire but beautifully restored, is another.
The blaze started when a spark fell into an inaccessible area inside the roof. Most of the damage to the building came from the enormous amount of water used to put out the fire. Despite the dramatic-looking flames, most of the restoration was unharmed.
The good news was that the flames had been pretty much contained entirely to the inside of the roof and essentially never got inside the building.
Some of the collections had gotten wet. Barrington knew if he acted quickly, he might be able to save them.
It turned out we could salvage the collections that had gotten wet if we prepared them in a specific way and shipped them off to a firm that specialized in salvage of wet materials. Then we heard from the structural engineers that all of the weight of the water in Torrey, along with the weight of the collections, led them to worry that the building might not sustain the additional weight. So they decided that we had to move all of the collections out immediately. And that led us to hiring Busca movers, and they brought cranes and 3 or 4 crews and moved everything. They cut a hole in the roof, moved a bunch of stuff out of the roof.
Barrington and his crew of scientists, student workers, and volunteers set up a temporary working space in the Jeffords building, and a renewed renovation continued on Torrey. Parts of the roof were repaired for a second time, and the interior was gutted. There were some pleasant surprises along the way.
We had always known that there was a beautiful arcade on the 3rd level, and that arcade has been exposed.
The work has exposed some features that will be covered up again, such as this 19th century brick chimney. But some elements will be incorporated into the interior redesign, like the tops of these pillars, which had been covered by a suspended ceiling.
So the question would arise, just how much did we lose in the fire? And it's amazing how little we lost. We actually lost no animal collections, and we lost about 5,000 specimens of plants.
Barrington knows his loss could have been much worse. He credits the firefighters on the scene for helping to save the collections.
The firemen were so effective in putting out the fire because they had actually responded to a false alarm in the building about 3 weeks before. Something that the renovation contractors did triggered a false alarm. And so the firemen showed up, and they actually went through the whole building at that time to make sure that nothing was amiss.
At the University of Vermont, I'm Rebecca Gollin with Across the Fence.
Our next segment takes us to the forest. A forest can be a tranquil place for solitude, an area to hunt or recreate. A forest is also a resource for firewood or wood products. And of course, forests are complex ecosystems that provide clean air, water, along with diverse wildlife and plant habitat. With all that, it's not surprising that 2 Vermont colleges are teaming together to provide students with a comprehensive forestry education. From the Across the Fence archive, Keith Silva tells us more.
It doesn't get much more hands-on than this. Bring a pen and paper, sure, but don't forget your axe, chainsaw, and ear protection, because it gets loud. Graham Leitner is the instructor for timber harvesting at Vermont Tech.
In timber harvesting, we start out with basics of forest management and silviculture, and then we're teaching the students on how to go out in the woods and evaluate a woodland for the potential of timber harvesting, and then we're doing quite a bit of work with logging safety and finishing up the semester with water quality and some forest mapping.
You look up and identify hazards.
Leitner has brought in Dave Birdsall from Northeast Woodland Training to teach the game of logging, a world-recognized training curriculum for chainsaw skills. This is Kristen Skoda's first college course, one first of many for this 19-year-old.
It was the first time I ever used a chainsaw. It was what I expected it to be like. It's a little intimidating, but not bad.
Besides how to safely use a chainsaw, Skoda is also learning how much work goes into working the woods.
The different harvesting systems are really cool, how many different ways you can get wood out of the forest and how much more goes into it than just cutting down a tree and getting some boards out of it, how much more goes into managing the forest, like for wildlife and just for recreational use. That's something I've found really interesting.
Nothing quite like the smell of the gas when you rev up the engine.
Charlie Young sees timber harvesting as more than a college course. It's a way of life.
When I get older, I want a large piece of land and property for myself, and I'm going to need firewood if I have a wood stove or something, and also land management. So using this, I can effectively or more effectively take care of my future, I guess.
The forestry major at Vermont Tech is a 2-year degree. While this fulfills a requirement to get a Vermont forestry license and is ideal for some students, administrators wanted to go further, so they reached out to another state school.
We designed this Associates in Forestry degree in collaboration with UVM.
Molly Willard manages Vermont Tech's Institute for Applied Agriculture and Food Systems.
Students could do their first 2 years here, and then they can either walk away with a technical associate's degree in forestry, or they can go on seamlessly to UVM into their junior year to acquire a Bachelor's of Science in Forestry.
This developing partnership between UVM and Vermont Tech is a win-win for students and educators.
It's nice for VTC and UVM to collaborate on educational curriculums like this, because I think both institutions bring a different set of expertise. So VTC really focuses on applied, tangible, technical education, and so our timber harvesting course very much is doing is focused on that. And then to go on to UVM, they're able to be really introduced to more faculty, a wider breadth of knowledge in terms of forest ecology, and then also research.
When he's not teaching, Leitner owns and operates Vermont Greenwood, a logging and timber harvesting business focused on sustainable forestry. He hires employees whose people skills match their knowledge of forestry.
90% of my employees have actually been formally trained in forestry, and I believe that timber harvesting in the modern world on smaller ownerships, small private woodlands owned by predominantly working families, really requires a greater level of expertise to be able to manage personal relationships on your job sites, to be able to do sustainable work in the woods, and to just make forestry a more well-respected and sustainable profession.
Very, very nice.
Felling trees requires concentration, patience, and tenacity. Skills Skoda and Young know they'll need to continue their education and build a career.
Thought about careers a lot, but as far as this, it's absolutely crucial if you want to advance your position, and especially being a forester or logger. Obviously, this program is set up so that you get hands-on experience, so that when you eventually go into the workforce, you're not just standing out there with your head spinning around. You know what to do and how to do it, and it just makes you more prepared for entering the workforce.
What do you think?
I really like steps, so that like, okay, when I'm doing this, this is what I have to remember. Right now, I'm kind of like focusing on the hands-on stuff, but I have been thinking about like different careers to go with forestry, and maybe just this class, like where I could take it.
Thanks to Vermont Tech and UVM, the next step for these students is sure to make them a cut above. In Randolph Center, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
And that's our program for today. We know you have choices, so thanks for choosing us. I'm Will Michael, inviting you to join us back here each weekday afternoon for another visit Across the Fence.